The moment Marcus Steele stepped through the mahogany doors of Crimson Gold, his own restaurant, he knew someone was about to die. Not from the storm raging outside Houston's elite River Oaks district, not from the wine-drunk laughter echoing off crystal chandeliers, but from the secret that would shatter his billion-dollar empire before midnight struck. He adjusted his weathered baseball cap, a deliberate choice to obscure his face. Marcus Steele was the most powerful man in Houston, but to the public he was a ghost. No photos, no interviews. His anonymity was his greatest asset, allowing him to become invisible, just another nobody in faded jeans. The customers had no idea the drifter sliding onto Barstool 17 owned every gleaming surface they touched. Thunder crashed as Marcus scanned the dining room. Senators, oil executives, tech moguls, all of them bleeding money into his empire while something far more dangerous bled in the shadows. That's when he saw her. A waitress pressed against the wall near the kitchen doors, shoulders trembling like a trapped bird, her serving tray abandoned on marble floors. But these weren't tears from a difficult customer or spilled wine. This was terror. Raw, bone-deep terror that made Marcus's billionaire instincts scream danger. "She okay?" Marcus asked the bartender, a thick-set man polishing glasses with mechanical precision. "That's Sophia Reyes," the bartender muttered. "Been crying for 3 days straight. Customers think she's just having boyfriend drama." Marcus studied Sophia's reflection in the bar mirror. Something glinted on her wrist as she wiped her eyes. A bracelet that definitely didn't match a waitress's salary. Diamond bracelet. The kind that cost more than most people's cars. His jaw tightened. Sophia returned to the floor, forcing smiles while her hands shook. But when she served table 12, a corner booth shrouded in shadows, Marcus saw it. The man sitting there wasn't eating, wasn't drinking, just watching Sophia with the focused intensity of a predator. And Sophia? She was terrified of him. That's when Marcus noticed the second detail that made his blood run cold. The man's briefcase, expensive, Italian leather, with initials that made Marcus's heart slam against his ribs. V.K. Victor Kozlov, his own business partner. The man who'd helped him build this empire from nothing. The man who wasn't supposed to be in Houston tonight. Marcus pulled out his phone, fingers trembling as he scrolled to Victor's last text. "Handling the Miami expansion. Won't be back for weeks." Yet here Victor sat, 30 feet away, watching Marcus's employee cry. Thunder exploded overhead as the pieces clicked together with terrifying clarity. The missing money from corporate accounts. The employees who'd quit suddenly. The accidents that had befallen anyone asking too many questions. His business partner wasn't just stealing from him. Victor was hunting, and Sophia knew something that was going to get her killed. Marcus gripped his whiskey glass until his knuckles turned white. In 12 hours, he'd discover Victor had been selling corporate secrets to competitors, using their restaurants to launder money for international cartels, and eliminating anyone who threatened to expose him. But right now, watching Sophia fight back tears while Victor studied her like prey, Marcus made a decision that would cost him everything he'd built. He was about to blow his cover, risk his fortune, destroy his own carefully constructed empire, because some things mattered more than money, and some secrets were worth dying for. What would you do if your empire was built on lies? Subscribe before the next revelation hits. The storm outside was just beginning, but the real tempest? That was about to tear through Crimson Gold with the force of betrayal, blood, and a love story that would redefine everything Marcus thought he knew about power. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and when you finish this story, rate it 1 to 10. This is just the beginning of something that'll leave you speechless. Marcus couldn't look away from Sophia's trembling hands as she served champagne to table 5. Every movement screamed of someone fighting to stay invisible. But invisible people don't wear $15,000 bracelets. He needed answers. Now. 20 minutes passed before Sophia's break. Marcus watched her slip through the back exit, past the dumpsters where shadows swallowed the alley hole. Against every instinct screaming at him to maintain his cover, he followed. She stood with her back against the brick wall, finally letting the mask drop. Her sobs echoed off wet pavement, raw and desperate. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Marcus said softly. Sophia spun around, eyes wide with panic. When she recognized the drifter from the bar, her shoulders sagged with exhaustion rather than relief. "Go away, please." Marcus stepped closer, rain beginning to mist around them. "Not until you tell me why you're wearing a bracelet worth more than most people make in a year." Sophia's hand flew to her wrist, instinctively covering the diamonds. But it was too late. The secret was out. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If I talk, people die. People are already dying, aren't they?" The question hit like a physical blow. Sophia's face crumpled, and for a moment, Marcus saw past the terror to something worse: guilt. "3 months ago I was just serving tables," she began, voice barely audible above the rain. "Then I saw Victor, Mr. Kozlov, in the back office after hours. He wasn't alone." Marcus's blood chilled. "Who was with him?" "Men in expensive suits. Foreign accents. They had briefcases full of cash and something else." Sophia's voice cracked. "Photos. Pictures of people who'd asked too many questions about the restaurant's finances." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Victor wasn't just embezzling. He was running the restaurants as fronts for money laundering and anyone who got too close. "The bracelet," Marcus pressed. "Where did it come from?" Sophia's tears fell harder. "Victor gave it to me. Said it was a bonus for keeping quiet. But I know what it really is." She looked up, eyes blazing with desperate honesty. "It's a leash. A reminder that he owns me now." Thunder crashed overhead, but Marcus barely heard it. His mind was racing through the implications. If Victor was eliminating threats and Sophia had evidence, why haven't you gone to the police? Sophia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because Victor showed me something else that night. A file with my little sister's photo, her school schedule, her daily route home. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Isabella is only 16. She has no idea she's being watched." Marcus felt rage building in his chest like a wildfire. Victor wasn't just stealing from him. He was terrorizing innocent people to maintain his empire of corruption. "There's more," Sophia continued as if the floodgates had opened. "I've been documenting everything. Names, dates, money transfers. I have proof of what he's doing." "Where?" "Hidden in my apartment. But if I disappear, if something happens to me..." She pulled out a small key from around her neck. "Safety deposit box 247 at First National. Everything's there." Marcus stared at the key, understanding the weight of what she was offering. Evidence that could destroy Victor. Evidence that could also get them both killed. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Sophia studied his face in the dim alley light. "Because you're the first person in months who's looked at me like I'm human instead of just another asset to control." She paused. "And because I think you're not who you pretend to be." Marcus's cover was slipping, but at this moment he didn't care. "What makes you say that?" "The way you carry yourself. The way you ask questions. Most drifters don't notice $15,000 bracelets." Sophia stepped closer. "Who are you, really?" Before Marcus could answer, footsteps echoed from the alley entrance. Both of them froze as Victor's silhouette appeared against the restaurant's backlights. "Sophia, dear." Victor's accented voice carried a deadly calm. "We need to talk." Marcus positioned himself slightly in front of Sophia, every muscle coiled for violence. But Victor's cold smile suggested he'd been expecting this moment. "And you must be the curious customer asking questions at the bar." Victor's eyes glittered with malice. "How unfortunate that you've become so involved." The rain intensified, washing away any chance of this ending peacefully. Marcus realized with crystal clarity that the next 60 seconds would determine whether Sophia lived to see tomorrow. But Victor had made one fatal mistake. He still didn't know who he was really dealing with. Victor stepped into the alley like death wearing Italian leather, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Sophia, my dear, you've been crying again." His voice dripped false concern. "Our customers might think you're unhappy." Marcus felt Sophia shrink behind him, her terror radiating like heat. But he held his ground, studying Victor's face, the face of a man he'd trusted with his fortune. "She's fine," Marcus said evenly. "Just needed some air." Victor's predatory gaze shifted to Marcus, sizing him up like a butcher examining meat. "And you are?" "Someone who doesn't like seeing women cornered in dark alleys." The laugh that escaped Victor's throat held no warmth. "How noble, but I'm afraid you've stumbled into a private conversation." Rain drummed harder against the alley walls as Victor reached inside his jacket. Marcus's muscles coiled, ready to strike, when Victor's phone buzzed. "Excuse me," Victor murmured, answering with silky politeness. "Yes, Senator Morrison, of course the shipment arrived safely." Marcus's blood turned to ice. Senator Morrison, the chairman of the banking committee, sitting at table 12 just moments ago. The same senator who'd been pushing through legislation that would benefit Victor's money laundering operation. Victor continued, his eyes never leaving Marcus and Sophia. "No witnesses, as promised. The Houston operation remains clean. Every woman needs to see what happens next. Subscribe so you're never caught defenseless." The call ended, and Victor pocketed his phone with theatrical precision. "Now where were we?" "You were about to walk away," Marcus said, his voice carrying an authority that made Victor pause. "Was I?" Victor stepped closer, and Marcus caught the glint of metal beneath his jacket. "You see, friend, Houston is my city. These restaurants, these people." He gestured toward Sophia. "They all belong to me." Sophia's whispered "please" broke Marcus's heart and ignited his fury simultaneously. "Sophia has been sharing some very creative stories," Victor continued, "about seeing things she shouldn't have seen, but we both know how unreliable traumatized minds can be." The casual cruelty in Victor's tone made Marcus's hands clench into fists. This was the man he'd built an empire with. The man who'd sat in boardrooms discussing quarterly profits while orchestrating murders. "She's leaving," Marcus declared. "Tonight, and you're going to let her go." Victor's laugh echoed off wet brick walls. "You misunderstand your position here, stranger. Do you know what happened to the last person who tried to protect one of my employees?" He pulled out his phone, swiping to a photo that made Sophia gasp in horror. Marcus glimpsed enough to see a young man barely alive in what looked like a hospital bed. Miguel Santoro, Sophia's former boyfriend. He thought he could save her too. Victor's smile turned arctic. "Brake failure is such a tragic accident, don't you think?" Sophia's knees buckled. Marcus caught her, feeling her body shake with grief and rage. "Miguel's still alive," Victor continued conversationally. "Paralyzed from the neck down, but alive. The doctors say he might regain some movement in his fingers. Eventually." The casual mention of destroying a man's life, keeping him alive just to maximize suffering, revealed the true depths of Victor's sadism. "You're a monster," Sophia whispered. "I'm a businessman," Victor corrected, "and business requires discipline." Marcus realized with crystal clarity that Victor wasn't just threatening them. He was enjoying it, the power, the fear, the complete control over human lives. But Victor had miscalculated. He was so focused on terrorizing Sophia that he'd missed the subtle shift in Marcus's posture, the way his breathing had changed, the cold calculation replacing shock in his eyes. "You made one mistake," Marcus said quietly. "And what's that?" "You assumed I was just some nobody who stumbled into your game." Victor's confident smirk faltered slightly. "Who are you?" Marcus pulled off his baseball cap, letting the rain wash over his face. For the first time in months, he looked Victor directly in the eye without hiding behind his disguise. "I'm the man who's going to destroy everything you've built." Recognition flickered across Victor's features, followed immediately by rage and something Marcus had never seen before. Fear. Impossible, Victor breathed. You're supposed to be in New York. The board meeting was a lie, just like everything else between us. The alley fell silent except for Rain and Sophia's ragged breathing. Victor's hand moved toward his weapon, but Marcus was already moving. The next 10 seconds would determine who walked out of this alley alive. But Victor had forgotten the most important rule of survival. Never corner a predator more dangerous than yourself. The first punch came faster than lightning. Victor's fist connected with Marcus's jaw, sending him staggering backward into the brick wall. But Marcus had been in worse fights. His old military instincts kicked in, a part of his life he'd buried long ago but never forgotten. He'd survived combat zones before he ever saw a boardroom. Victor pulled his gun, chrome gleaming in the alley's dim light. You should have stayed in New York, Marcus. Sophia screamed as the weapon swung toward her, but Marcus was already moving, his training taking over. He grabbed Victor's wrist, twisting until bones cracked and the gun clattered across wet pavement. Run! Marcus shouted to Sophia, but she didn't run. Instead, she grabbed the fallen weapon with trembling hands, pointing it at Victor with determination that surprised them both. I'm done running, she whispered. Victor laughed through his pain. You don't have the stomach for murder, little girl. Maybe not, Sophia replied, but I have the stomach for justice. Marcus used Victor's distraction to land a devastating uppercut. His former partner crumpled to the asphalt, blood pooling from his split lip. This isn't over, Victor snarled, struggling to stand. You have no idea how deep this goes. Kill me, and 20 more take my place. Then I guess I'll have to kill all 20, Marcus said with deadly calm. But Victor's smile returned, even through the blood. You can't protect everyone, Marcus. Your precious Sophia, her little sister. How many people will die because you decided to play hero? The words hit like physical blows. Marcus realized with sickening clarity that eliminating Victor wouldn't end this nightmare. It would only make the remaining players more desperate. Victor pulled himself upright, leaning against the wall. You want to save them? Give me what I want. Which is? Complete control of the Eastern operations. 50 million in untraceable funds, and your public resignation from the board. Marcus stared at his former partner, the man who'd helped him build everything, now demanding he destroy it all. You have 12 hours to decide, Victor continued. After that, accidents start happening. Isabella first, then Sophia, then anyone else you care about. Victor disappeared into the storm, leaving Marcus and Sophia alone in the blood-stained alley. Sophia's hands shook as she lowered the gun. We need to call the police. The police can't help us. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts that could mobilize private security, offshore accounts, extraction teams. Victor owns half the Houston PD. Then what do we do? Marcus looked at this brave woman who'd stood up to a killer, who'd risked everything to protect her sister. The woman who'd somehow seen through his disguise to the man beneath. We disappear. Tonight. I can get you and Isabella new identities. Protection. No. Sophia's voice cut through his planning like a blade. I won't spend my life running from shadows. Then you'll spend your life dead. The harsh words hung between them as rain continued to fall. Marcus watched Sophia process the reality of their situation. That saving her sister meant sacrificing any chance at a normal life. There's something else, Sophia said quietly. Something I didn't tell you about that night I saw Victor. Marcus turned, sensing the shift in her tone. The briefcases weren't just full of cash. There were documents, contracts. She met his eyes with devastating honesty. Your signature was on half of them. The revelation hit Marcus like a sledgehammer to the chest. That's impossible. Forged, maybe, but perfect forgeries. Sophia stepped closer, her voice urgent. Victor's been using your identity to authorize transfers, deals, even offshore accounts. If the FBI investigates, all evidence points to you. Marcus felt sick. He had trusted Victor with everything: signature authorizations, account access, his complete confidence. He never thought to look. Marcus's mind raced through the implications. Victor hadn't just been stealing from him, he'd been framing him, setting him up to take the fall for years of criminal activity. "How long?" Marcus asked. "Based on the dates I saw, at least 2 years, maybe longer. 2 years of his signature being forged. 2 years of crimes committed in his name. 2 years of building a case that would destroy him, even if Victor disappeared tomorrow." "There's more," Sophia continued. "The Senator Morrison you heard on the phone? His wife sits on the Federal Reserve Board. Victor showed me photos of them together, compromising photos. He's blackmailing government officials to protect his operation." Marcus felt his entire world tilting on its axis. This wasn't just corporate theft or money laundering. This was a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government, with him positioned as the perfect fall guy. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Sophia's eyes blazed with fierce determination. "Because whoever you really are, you're the only person with the power to stop him. And because—" She hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her features. "Because I trust you." Those 3 words, "I trust you," hit Marcus harder than any of Victor's revelations. When was the last time someone had said that to him? When was the last time trust hadn't been calculated by profit margins or stock options? "Sophia," he began, knowing he was about to cross a line that would change everything between them. "I know who you are," she whispered. "Marcus Steele, CEO of Steele Industries, owner of 43 restaurants across the country." The secret was out. His carefully constructed cover lay in ruins around them. "How long have you known?" "Since that first night. The way you analyzed the restaurant's operations, the authority in your voice, the fact that you cared enough about one crying waitress to risk your life." She stepped closer. "The question is, what are we going to do about Victor?" Marcus looked at this extraordinary woman who'd seen through his disguise, stood up to a killer, and trusted him with secrets that could get them both murdered. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking like a CEO calculating risks and rewards. He was thinking like a man who'd found something worth fighting for. Marcus paced his penthouse office like a caged predator, watching Houston's skyline blur through rain-streaked windows. 48 hours had passed since the alley confrontation. 48 hours of silence that felt like a loaded gun pressed against his temple. His phone buzzed. "Sir, Sophia didn't report for her shift tonight." His head of security confirmed what Marcus's gut already knew. "What about her apartment?" "Empty. Looks like she left in a hurry." Marcus's blood turned to ice. He'd given Sophia his private number, made her promise to check in every 6 hours. Her last text had been simple: "Isabella's safe. Meeting you tomorrow as planned." That was 18 hours ago. He grabbed his jacket, heading for the elevator. If Victor had taken Sophia, the 12-hour deadline meant nothing. The game had already begun. The drive to Sophia's apartment took 11 minutes, 10 minutes longer than it should have thanks to Houston traffic, and 1 minute too long for Marcus's fraying nerves. The building superintendent, a wiry man named Carlos, met him at the door. "You the friend she mentioned? The one who'd come looking if something happened?" "What did you see?" 3 men, expensive suits. They went up around noon, came down 20 minutes later carrying a large suitcase. Carlos's weathered face creased with concern. Miss Reyes was screaming when they brought her down to the parking garage. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "Which direction?" "East, toward the industrial district." Carlos grabbed his arm. "Mister, these weren't regular cops. They moved like soldiers. Military precision. Victor's private contractors. The kind of men who made people disappear without leaving fingerprints or witnesses." Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. "We need to talk." Victor's voice carried smug satisfaction. "Pier 19, 1 hour. Come alone, or the girl dies screaming." The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone, calculating odds and options. Pier 19 was Victor's territory, surrounded by warehouses he controlled, staffed by security that answered only to him. Walking in alone was suicide. Not walking in was murder. He dialed his head of security. "I need a tactical team at Pier 19 in 45 minutes. Full surveillance, but stay invisible until my signal." "Sir, this sounds like a trap." "It is a trap, but sometimes you have to walk into the trap to spring one of your own." Marcus ended the call and pulled out another phone, one Victor didn't know existed. His fingers moved across the screen, typing a message that would either save Sophia's life or destroy his empire. "Elena, I need you to execute Protocol 7. Transfer all liquid assets to account Bravo 7. If I don't check in by midnight, assume I'm compromised and initiate full exposure." Elena Vasquez, his chief legal counsel and the only person besides Sophia who knew the complete truth about Victor's conspiracy. If Marcus didn't survive the next 2 hours, Elena would leak everything to the FBI, the media, and every regulatory agency in the country. Victor would burn. But so would Marcus. The drive to Pier 19 felt like traveling through a nightmare. Every shadow could hide a sniper. Every passing car could contain assassins. But Marcus kept driving, because somewhere in those warehouses, Sophia was waiting for rescue or death. He parked at the entrance to Pier 19, stepping out into air thick with salt and industrial chemicals. The docks stretched into darkness like the mouth of some massive beast. His phone buzzed. A text message from Sophia's number. "Warehouse 7. You have 5 minutes before I start removing her fingers." But something was wrong with the message. Sophia would never write that clinical, cold. She'd fight, even in a text. She'd find a way to warn him, unless she was already dead. Marcus pushed the thought away and moved toward Warehouse 7, every step taking him deeper into Victor's trap. But as he approached the building, he noticed something that made his blood freeze. Fresh tire tracks in the mud. Not from one vehicle, but from at least 6. And they were all heading away from the warehouse. Victor wasn't just planning to kill him and Sophia. He was planning something much worse. Marcus reached the warehouse door and found it standing open. Inside, a single light illuminated a chair in the center of the vast space, empty. But on the chair lay Sophia's diamond bracelet, now stained with blood. His phone rang. "Disappointed?" Victor's laughter echoed from speakers hidden throughout the warehouse. "Did you really think I'd make it that easy?" "Where is she?" "Sophia is safe. For now. But she's no longer the prize you need to worry about." Marcus's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "Check your email, partner. The board of directors received some very interesting documents an hour ago." She vanished without warning. Don't let the next twist catch you unprepared. Marcus pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. His inbox showed dozens of missed calls from board members, journalists, federal agents. The subject lines told the story. Urgent. Criminal investigation into steel industries. Federal warrant issued for Marcus Steele. Breaking billionaire CEO linked to international money laundering. Victor had done it. He'd released the forged documents, the fabricated evidence, the carefully constructed frame job that would destroy Marcus's life and reputation. "The FBI will be at your penthouse within the hour," Victor's voice continued, "along with warrants for your arrest on charges of racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy. Quite impressive, really. 20 years to life if you're lucky." Marcus stared at his phone, watching his empire crumble in real time. Stock prices plummeting, board members resigning, partners severing contracts. Everything he'd built destroyed in 60 minutes. "But I'm feeling generous," Victor continued. "There's still a way out. Sign over complete control of your assets to me, and I'll ensure the evidence against you disappears. Refuse, and you'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison while I comfort your grieving widow." "You don't have a widow to comfort." "Not yet. But Sophia would make a lovely replacement, don't you think?" The threat hit Marcus like a physical blow. Victor wasn't just destroying his business empire, he was planning to take everything that mattered to him. including the woman he was falling in love with. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible choice crushing down on him. Save his empire and lose Sophia forever, or sacrifice everything he'd built for a chance to save the woman who'd somehow become his entire world. When he opened his eyes, his decision was already made. You made one mistake, Victor. And what's that? Marcus smiled grimly into the empty warehouse. You assumed I cared more about money than I do about her. Marcus's phone exploded with incoming calls as he raced from the empty warehouse. FBI, board members, reporters. Each ring was another nail in his corporate coffin. He ignored them all except one. Elena, tell me you have good news. His chief legal counsel's voice was ice-cold professional. The documents Victor released are sophisticated forgeries, but they'll hold up under initial investigation. You have maybe 6 hours before the FBI realizes they've been played. 6 hours to do what? Disappear. I've prepared extraction protocols. Private jet, Swiss accounts, new identity. No. Marcus cut through traffic like a man possessed. Find me Victor's real location, not the warehouse games. Where would he take Sophia? Marcus, listen to me. If you don't run now, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison for crimes you didn't commit. Then I'll rot in prison knowing I tried to save her. Elena's silence stretched long enough for Marcus to wonder if the call had dropped. Finally, there's something else. Something that changes everything. Marcus's blood turned to ice at her tone. What? The board called an emergency meeting an hour ago. They voted unanimously to remove you as CEO, effective immediately. The words hit like physical blows. 40 years of building his empire, gone in a single vote. Who did they appoint as interim CEO? Another pause. Viktor Kozlov. Marcus nearly crashed his car into a concrete barrier. The betrayal was complete. Victor hadn't just framed him. He'd positioned himself to legally seize control of everything Marcus owned. How is that possible? The emergency succession clause you signed 5 years ago. In case of criminal charges against the CEO, the board can immediately appoint the largest shareholder as interim leader. Victor isn't the largest shareholder. He is now. Shell companies, offshore purchases, proxy battles. He's been buying up shares for months through dozens of different entities. As of this morning, he owns 37%, more than enough for interim control. Marcus pulled over, hands shaking with rage. Victor had played a game that lasted years, moving pieces Marcus never even knew existed. There's more, Elena continued. The FBI isn't just investigating financial crimes. They have an informant claiming you ordered the assassination of 3 former employees who threatened to expose the money laundering. 3 assassinations I knew nothing about. I know that. You know that. But the evidence says otherwise. Elena's voice cracked slightly. Marcus, he didn't just frame you. He's been killing people in your name for months. The full scope of Victor's plan crystallized with terrifying clarity. Frame Marcus. Seize his company. Eliminate anyone who could expose the truth, and keep Sophia alive just long enough to watch Marcus's world burn before killing them both. Elena, I need you to do something that might destroy your career. I'm listening. Release everything. Every document about Victor's real activities. Every piece of evidence we've gathered. Send it to the FBI, the SEC, the media, everyone. That will implicate you in the legitimate business dealings you had with him over the years. Then I'll go down fighting instead of running. Marcus's phone GPS showed 37 possible locations Victor might use as a holding facility. Abandoned warehouses, offshore properties, private airstrips, all of them owned by shell companies that traced back to Victor's network. But Marcus knew his former partner better than anyone. Victor was a creature of habit, nostalgic about the past. He wouldn't choose someplace random. He'd choose someplace that meant something. Marcus's fingers flew across his phone, pulling up property records from their early partnership. There, a private estate 40 minutes outside Houston. The first property they'd bought together, back when Marcus still believed Victor was his friend instead of his destroyer. The riverside mansion, isolated, soundproof, perfect for torture and murder. Marcus pressed the accelerator to the floor, racing through Houston's outskirts as police sirens wailed in the distance. Elena had been right. The FBI was mobilizing. But whether they were coming for him or finally understanding Victor's deception, Marcus couldn't tell. His phone buzzed, a video message from Victor's number. Against every instinct screaming at him not to look, Marcus opened it. Sophia sat tied to a chair in what looked like a basement. Her face was bruised, her shirt torn, but her eyes blazed with defiant fury. Even beaten and bound, she was fighting. Victor's voice came from behind the camera. "Your girlfriend has been telling me the most interesting stories about your intimate conversations. Did you really think you could trust her with your secrets?" The camera swung to show Victor's face, smiling with predatory satisfaction. "She's been working for me all along, Marcus. Every tear, every confession, every moment of vulnerability, all of it was performance." Marcus's world tilted on its axis. The woman he'd fallen in love with, the woman he was sacrificing his empire to save, had betrayed him from the beginning. But then he heard it. Sophia's voice, barely audible, but unmistakably real. "He's lying, Marcus. Don't listen to—" The sound of a slap echoed through the phone speaker. Victor's hand appeared in frame, backhanding Sophia so hard her chair nearly toppled. Now, dear. We mustn't spoil the surprise." Marcus's rage burned away every other emotion. Victor could destroy his company, frame him for crimes, steal his fortune. But laying hands on Sophia crossed a line that demanded blood. The video continued. "You have 20 minutes to reach the Riverside mansion, Marcus. Come alone, or I start removing pieces of your beloved informant." The call ended, but not before Marcus caught something Victor hadn't intended to show. In the background of the video, partially visible through a window, the distinctive red neon sign of Chen's all-night diner. Victor wasn't at the Riverside mansion. He was at the old steel industries warehouse district, less than 15 minutes away. Marcus smiled grimly. For all his planning, Victor had made his first real mistake. He was about to make his last one. Marcus dialed his head of security one final time. "Change of plans. Warehouse District, Building C. Full tactical response in 10 minutes. Sir, the FBI is en route to your location with arrest warrants." "Let them come. If I'm going to prison, I'm taking Victor with me." Marcus ended the call and checked his weapon, a .45 caliber Colt he'd carried since his military days, but never thought he'd need in civilian life. Tonight he was going to war. As Marcus approached the warehouse district, he could see the red glow of Chen's diner in the distance. Somewhere in those shadowy buildings, Victor was torturing the woman Marcus loved, believing he'd won a game that had lasted years. But Victor had forgotten the most important rule of warfare: never corner an enemy with nothing left to lose. Marcus Steele had lost his company, his reputation, and his freedom. All he had left was Sophia, and he'd kill anyone who tried to take her away. Marcus cut the engine 3 blocks from the warehouse district, moving through Houston's industrial maze like the ghost he'd become. His tactical team was in position, 6 ex-military specialists who'd followed him through corporate wars and now prepared for literal ones. Through his earpiece, thermal imaging shows 4 hostiles, 2 guards at entrance, 1 roving patrol, 1 with the target in basement level. Victor? Basement, with the girl. Marcus checked his weapon one final time. The .45 felt heavy in his hands, not from weight, but from the knowledge that in the next 10 minutes he'd either save Sophia's life or die trying. "Sir," his team leader's voice crackled through static. "FBI convoy approaching from the east. You've got maybe 5 minutes before they lock down the entire district." Perfect. Marcus had wanted an audience for Victor's downfall. He moved through shadows toward Building C, where red neon light from Chen's diner cast everything in the color of blood. Through broken windows, he could see Victor's guards. Professionals, but not soldiers. Corporate security playing at war. They'd never fought someone with nothing left to lose. Marcus's first shot took down the entrance guard with silent precision. The second guard turned at the sound of his partner falling, but Marcus was already moving. A knife to the throat, quick and efficient. 2 down. The roving patrol presented more challenge. A man with military training, alert and cautious. Marcus waited until the guard passed his position, then struck. The fight lasted 30 seconds and ended with a broken neck. 3 down. 1 to go. But the basement wasn't just about eliminating Victor. It was about saving Sophia before Victor realized his empire was crumbling around him. Marcus descended into the warehouse basement, following the sound of Victor's voice echoing off concrete walls. Really thought you could outsmart me? I've been planning this for 5 years, Marcus. 5 years of positioning myself to take everything you built. Marcus peered around the corner and saw them. Sophia tied to a chair, blood trickling from her split lip, but her eyes blazing with unbroken defiance. Victor paced in front of her like a predator savoring his kill. "He's coming for you," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the pain. "And when he gets here, you're going to wish you'd never been born." Victor's laughter bounced off concrete walls. "Marcus Steele is finished. His company belongs to me. His fortune will be frozen by federal investigators, and you, my dear, will watch him die before joining him." That's when Marcus stepped into the light. "You always did talk too much, Victor." Victor spun around, his face cycling through shock, fear, and rage in rapid succession. His hand moved toward the gun on the table, but Marcus was already aiming. "I wouldn't." "How did you find me? The warehouse was supposed to be..." "Chen's diner sign, visible in your torture video." Marcus kept his weapon trained on Victor's chest. "For someone who planned this for 5 years, you made a pretty stupid mistake." Victor's eyes darted toward the stairs, calculating escape routes. "You can't kill me, Marcus. I'm the only one who can clear your name. Kill me and you rot in prison forever." "Maybe, but you'll be dead, so I call that a win." Power like this doesn't come free. Subscribe to see who pays the price. Above them, the sound of boots on metal stairs echoed through the warehouse. The FBI had arrived, but they were too late to stop what came next. "You destroyed everything I built," Marcus continued, stepping closer. "Stole my company, framed me for murder. But none of that matters now." "Then what does?" Marcus glanced at Sophia, who was watching him with eyes full of love and trust and absolute faith that he'd save her. In that moment, he understood why people wrote songs about love, why they started wars over it, why they'd give up empires for it. She does. Victor's desperation reached new heights. "Kill me and my associates will hunt her down. They'll make her disappear in ways that'll haunt your nightmares. You can't protect her forever." "I don't need forever. I just need today." The FBI was getting closer, shouting voices, tactical commands. Marcus had maybe 90 seconds before the warehouse swarmed with federal agents. But Victor made his final mistake. He lunged for the gun on the table. Marcus's shot echoed through the basement like thunder. Victor crumpled to the concrete floor, clutching his shoulder and screaming in pain. "My lawyers will..." "Your lawyers will be busy defending themselves." Marcus kept his weapon trained on Victor while moving toward Sophia. "Elena released everything an hour ago. Bank records, forged documents, murder contracts. The FBI knows exactly who the real criminal is." Marcus cut Sophia's bonds with swift efficiency. She collapsed into his arms, and for a moment the warehouse basement disappeared. There was only her warmth, her strength, her fierce whispered, "I knew you'd come." "Sir, FBI, drop your weapons." Tactical lights flooded the basement as federal agents poured down the stairs. Marcus carefully placed his gun on the floor and raised his hands, but he didn't step away from Sophia. "Marcus Steele?" The lead agent, a woman in her 40s, approached with professional caution. "That's me." "Agent Rivera, FBI. We have some questions about your relationship with Victor Kozlov and allegations of corporate fraud." Marcus looked down at Victor, bleeding on cold concrete and whimpering like the coward he'd always been. "Ask him. He's got plenty to confess. Agent Rivera followed his gaze to Victor, who was trying to crawl toward the stairs despite his wounded shoulder. Mr. Kozlov, you're under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, kidnapping, and accessory to murder. You don't understand. Victor's voice cracked with desperation. I have information. I can give you senators, judges, federal officials. Save it for your lawyer. As federal agents handcuffed Victor and dragged him up the stairs, Marcus helped Sophia to her feet. She was battered but unbroken, her spirit intact despite everything Victor had put her through. Is it over? She asked. Marcus looked around the basement where his old life had died and his new one had been born, where he'd chosen love over money, truth over safety, redemption over revenge. Yeah, he said, pulling her close as FBI agents secured the crime scene around them. It's over. But even as he said the words, Marcus knew their story was just beginning. 6 months later, Marcus stood outside the federal courthouse in downtown Houston, watching Victor Kozlov shuffle toward a prison transport van in orange jumpsuit and shackles. The trial had been a media sensation. Corporate betrayal, international conspiracy, assassination plots. Everything the public loved in a villain. Victor's conviction on all counts had taken the jury less than 4 hours to deliver. Life in prison, without possibility of parole. Feeling satisfied? Agent Rivera approached, carrying a thick manila folder. I'm feeling grateful, Marcus replied, for competent federal investigators who followed the evidence. Rivera smiled. Elena Vasquez made our job easy. The documentation she provided was flawless. Banking records, forged signatures, communication intercepts. Victor's entire operation laid out like a roadmap. Marcus watched Victor's transport disappear into Houston traffic, taking his former partner toward a federal supermax facility where he'd spend his remaining years in a concrete box. Justice, but not revenge. Marcus had learned the difference. What about the government officials? Senator Morrison resigned in disgrace. His wife was removed from the Federal Reserve Board. 3 federal judges are under investigation. Rivera's expression darkened. Victor's blackmail network was extensive. We're still unraveling all the connections. And the murders? Victor's confession implicated 7 contract killers across 4 states, all in custody. The families of the victims finally have closure. Marcus nodded, thinking of Miguel Santoro, the young man Victor had paralyzed just to send a message. Miguel was walking again slowly, with the help of experimental therapy funded by Marcus's personal foundation. Some wounds healed, others left scars that served as reminders. There's something else, Rivera continued, opening her folder. The SEC finished their investigation into steel industries. You've been cleared of all charges. Your board of directors has voted unanimously to restore you as CEO. Marcus took the documents but didn't look at them immediately. 6 months ago, this news would have meant everything to him. Today, it felt like paperwork. They also voted to approve your recommendation for the new chief security officer position. Marcus smiled. Sophia earned it. She has better instincts for spotting corruption than anyone I've ever worked with. Speaking of Miss Reyes, how is she adjusting? See for yourself. Marcus pointed toward the courthouse steps where Sophia emerged, wearing a tailored business suit and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who'd survived hell and come out stronger. Her sister Isabella walked beside her, no longer the terrified 16-year-old hiding from Victor's threats, but a college freshman studying criminal justice. Both women had testified during Victor's trial, their voices steady and clear as they described his threats, his violence, his systematic destruction of innocent lives. The jury had watched Sophia recount her torture with unflinching honesty, and several members had been openly crying by the time she finished. She's remarkable, Rivera observed. Yes, she is. Sophia spotted Marcus and smiled, the same smile that had pierced through his disguise that first night at the restaurant. The smile that had made him remember what it felt like to be human instead of just wealthy. Mr. Steele? Rivera extended her hand. Thank you for your cooperation during this investigation, and congratulations on getting your life back. Marcus shook her hand but kept his eyes on Sophia. I didn't get my old life back, Agent Rivera. I got something much better. Rivera followed his gaze and understood. A new one. As Rivera walked away, Sophia and Isabella reached Marcus. Isabella hugged him briefly, still shy around the man who'd saved her from becoming Victor's next victim, but grateful enough to trust him with her family's safety. How did it feel? Sophia asked. Watching him get sentenced? Marcus considered the question. For months he'd imagined this moment would bring satisfaction, closure, maybe even joy. Instead, he felt something simpler and more profound. Peace. It felt like the end of a chapter, he said finally, and the beginning of a new one. Marcus took Sophia's hand, feeling the calluses from her years of waitressing alongside the smooth skin that had never quite forgotten how to be soft. She still wore the diamond bracelet, not as Victor's leash, but as her own reminder of how far she'd traveled from that terrified girl crying in restaurant alleys. The board meeting is tomorrow, Marcus said. Official reinstatement as CEO. Full authority restored. Are you nervous? Marcus thought about the question. 6 months ago, corporate power had been his entire identity. Now it was just a tool, something he could use to build better companies, protect employees, create value that went beyond quarterly profits. No, but I have a condition for accepting. Which is? My chief security officer has to agree to a very important assignment. Sophia raised an eyebrow. What kind of assignment? Marcus dropped to one knee on the courthouse steps, pulling out a ring box that had been burning a hole in his pocket for 3 weeks. The kind that lasts the rest of our lives. Isabella gasped. Passing reporters stopped to stare. FBI agents paused their conversations to watch, but Marcus only had eyes for Sophia, whose hands flew to her mouth as tears began streaming down her cheeks. Sophia Reyes, he said, his voice carrying across the courthouse plaza. You saved my life in more ways than I can count. You showed me what courage looks like when everything seems hopeless. You taught me that some things are worth losing everything to protect. He opened the ring box, revealing a diamond that caught the Houston sunlight like captured fire. Will you marry me? Sophia's answer came through tears and laughter, and a joy so pure it made everyone watching remember why they believed in love stories. Yes. Yes, Marcus. Of course, yes. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, the crowd around them erupted in applause. Reporters shouted questions. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. But in that moment, surrounded by chaos and celebration, Marcus and Sophia found the same peace they discovered in a dark alley 6 months ago. Sometimes justice looked like prison sentences and federal convictions. Sometimes it looked like two people finding each other in the wreckage of their destroyed lives and choosing to build something beautiful from the ashes. Sometimes it looked like love winning against impossible odds. Today, it looked like all three. 2 years after Victor's conviction, Marcus stood in the boardroom of the newly renamed Steele Reyes Hospitality Group, watching his wife present the quarterly safety report to investors. Sophia commanded the room with natural authority, her voice steady as she outlined the revolutionary employee protection protocols they'd implemented across all 47 restaurants. Gone were the days of vulnerable staff suffering in silence. Every location now had anonymous reporting systems, trauma counselors, and security measures that would have made Victor's predatory behavior impossible. Employee satisfaction is up 37%, Sophia continued, clicking to the next slide. Turnover has dropped to the lowest levels in industry history. When people feel safe and valued, they create extraordinary experiences for customers. The investors, many of whom had fled during Victor's scandal, nodded approvingly. The company's stock price had not only recovered but reached record highs. Turns out treating employees like human beings instead of disposable assets was surprisingly profitable. Questions? Sophia asked. An elderly investor raised his hand. Mrs. Steele Reyes, your background is somewhat unconventional for a chief security officer. How do you respond to critics who say you lack traditional corporate experience? Marcus tensed, but Sophia's smile was serene. You're right. I've never attended Harvard Business School or worked at McKinsey, but I have survived corporate predators, witnessed systematic abuse, and helped expose international criminal conspiracy. I'd argue that makes me uniquely qualified to protect our people from the same threats. The room fell silent. Then, slowly, the investors began to applaud. After the meeting, Marcus found Sophia on their private balcony overlooking Houston's skyline. The city lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and somewhere in the distance, the original Crimson Gold restaurant glowed with warm light. Penny for your thoughts? Marcus asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Just thinking about Miguel's wedding next month. Did you see the invitation? Marcus smiled. Miguel Santoro, the young man Victor had tried to destroy, was marrying his physical therapist, the woman who'd helped him walk again. Love had a way of blooming in the most unexpected places. He asked me to be his best man, Marcus said. And I said yes. Seemed like the least I could do for the man who helped us realize what we were fighting for. Sophia leaned back against his chest. We've come a long way from that alley. Any regrets? She turned in his arms, her eyes reflecting the city lights. About losing my job as a waitress. About being kidnapped and tortured. About watching you give up your anonymity to save me. She pretended to consider. Not one. Even though our honeymoon was interrupted by depositions? Especially because of that. Most couples get boring stories about beach resorts. We get to tell our grandchildren we took down an international criminal conspiracy on our wedding night. Marcus laughed, remembering their first year of marriage, a whirlwind of congressional hearings, media interviews, and corporate restructuring, all while building a relationship from the foundation of shared trauma and absolute trust. Speaking of grandchildren, Sophia said with a mischievous smile, Isabella called today. How's she doing at law school? Brilliantly, but that's not why she called. Sophia's smile widened. She wanted to know if we're planning to give her any nieces or nephews anytime soon. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Are we? That depends. Are you ready to be a father who can't solve every problem with money and tactical teams? I'm ready to learn. 3 years later, Marcus pushed a stroller through Herman Park, while his 2-year-old daughter Sophia, named after the woman who'd saved his soul, chased ducks with the fearless determination she'd inherited from her mother. Daddy, up, Sophia demanded, raising her arms toward Marcus with complete confidence that he'd drop everything to lift her up. He always did. As Marcus settled Sophia on his shoulders, his phone buzzed with a message from Elena, now the company's chief legal officer. Another whistleblower came forward. Restaurant chain in Denver. Same pattern as Victor's operation. Marcus looked at his daughter, who was pointing at everything with infectious wonder, then at Sophia, who was spreading a picnic blanket with the efficient grace of someone who'd learned to find joy in simple moments. What do you think, sweetheart? He asked Sophia. Should Daddy and Mommy help the people in Denver? Help people, Sophia declared with absolute certainty. Smart girl. The Steele Reyes Foundation had become legendary for exposing corporate corruption and protecting vulnerable employees. Their hotline received dozens of calls weekly from workers trapped in situations similar to what Sophia had endured. Each case was investigated with the thoroughness of a federal probe and the compassion of people who understood what it meant to feel powerless. Lunch is ready, Sophia called, patting the blanket beside her. Marcus lowered Sophia to the ground and watched her toddle toward her mother with single-minded determination. The little girl had Sophia's dark eyes and Marcus's stubborn streak, a combination that promised interesting teenage years. Elena texted about Denver, Marcus said, settling beside his wife. I saw. The pattern matches Victor's early operations. Sophia unwrapped sandwiches with practiced efficiency. How many people do you think are trapped there? At least a dozen, maybe more. They ate in comfortable silence, watching Sophia chase butterflies while other families enjoyed the perfect Houston afternoon. To anyone observing, they looked like typical wealthy parents enjoying a park picnic. No one would guess they'd spent their morning planning the takedown of another criminal conspiracy. Sometimes I wonder what our life would be like if I'd never walked into Crimson Gold that night, Marcus mused. You'd still be rich and lonely. I'd still be scared and powerless. Victor would still be destroying lives. Sophia took his hand. Some things are meant to happen. Even the terrible parts? Especially the terrible parts. They're what make the beautiful parts matter. Marcus squeezed her hand, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. From that first night when he'd seen her crying in shadows to this moment, watching their daughter play in sunshine, every step had been necessary. The heartbreak had led to healing. The betrayal had revealed true loyalty. The destruction had cleared ground for something better to grow. Sophia ran back to them, grass stains on her dress and dirt under her fingernails, holding a dandelion like it was the most precious treasure in the world. "For Mama," she announced, presenting the flower to Sophia with ceremonial importance. "Thank you, baby girl. It's beautiful." Sophia beamed and immediately ran off to find another dandelion for Dada. Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Agent Rivera. "Denver FBI wants to coordinate with your foundation. Unofficial consultation." He showed the message to Sophia, who read it with the same expression she'd worn that first night in the alley. Determined, fierce, ready to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. "When do we leave?" she asked. "We? You don't seriously think you're going without me?" Marcus looked at his wife, the woman who'd stared down killers, testified before Congress, and somehow convinced a room full of billionaire investors to fund employee protection programs because it was the right thing to do. What about Sophia? Isabella graduates law school next month. She's been wanting to spend time with her niece. Of course, Sophia had already thought it through. She always did. Denver could be dangerous, Marcus warned. Good thing I married someone with tactical training and deep pockets. Sophia returned with a slightly wilted dandelion, which Marcus accepted with the solemnity of a state award. As his daughter climbed into his lap, chattering about ducks and flowers and all the wonders a 2-year-old could find in a simple park, Marcus realized something profound. This was what winning looked like. Not the corporate victories or stock prices or media attention. This, a family built on truth instead of convenience. A marriage forged in fire and strengthened by shared purpose. A daughter who would grow up knowing her parents fought for people who needed protecting. "Ready to save the world again?" Sophia asked, packing up their picnic. "With you?" "Always. Stories like this don't happen by accident. Subscribe for more love that defies the odds." As they walked toward their car, Sophia secure in Marcus's arms and Sophia's hand warm in his free one, Marcus thought about all the people still trapped in situations like the one that had brought them together. Scared employees afraid to speak up. Corrupt bosses who thought money made them untouchable. Victims who needed someone willing to fight impossible battles. Tomorrow they'd start planning the Denver operation. They'd gather evidence, build cases, and give voiceless people the power to reclaim their lives. But today they were just a family, enjoying a perfect afternoon in Houston sunshine, living proof that sometimes, just sometimes, love really could conquer all.